Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bluddworth, and as you can see by the graphics, today's video is going to be a first look and a flip through the preface and the premise of Dangerous Journeys by Gary Gygax with Dave Newton. And this is for the Mythos system. So this is the first RPG that Gary Gygax developed outside of TSR in roughly 1992, and this was originally published by Game Designers Workshop. So I had looked into seeing if Game Designers Workshop still offers the ability to buy this either in PDF or in reprint, and it was not listed. So I have a feeling that they might not even have the license to continue producing this. I'm not really sure, but it's impossible to find PDFs out there that you don't have to pay a price to someone providing it, as a PDF. So that was one of the advantages to the Trove, was that you can get these older out of print books and take a look at them in PDF form. Now, of course, I do have the physical copy. I recently made these purchases. I have the three the three main books. I've been looking for the equivalent of the monster manual for this system, and I haven't come across that yet. But I'm on the lookout for it. So without further ado, I'm going to jump right into flipping through using this. So I will apologize ahead of time that I will have to shift the book itself around quite a bit in order to get the camera focused and actually be able to cover the entire thing. It's occasionally I have something that's just the size and setup of the camera doesn't quite match up, and so it's hard to display the game itself, the game book itself. So which is why I rely on PDFs as well. But like I said, I couldn't find one that was that was available to use for this purpose. So all I'm going to cover today is the very beginning introduction of the game and the game preference. I want to spend an entire video, a separate video on character creation, and so that will be video number 2, and then I will get into chapter 3, which is Heka, which is the magic system, then 4, and then 5, improving skills and such. The book is broken down into 2 different parts. So there's a basic game, which is basically the first 35 or more. Actually, it's the first 55 pages. And then after it gets into the advanced Mythos rules. So Mythos is designed to be like a generic game system that could be used across different genres. But this one here is going to focus at least on a fantasy setting. So we're going to get right into that now. So as you can see, I mean the art is very very good. It's reminiscent of comic book quality, like Savage Sword of Conan kind of comic book quality artwork. So really cool stuff here. Let's see. The cover art is by Larry Elmore. As you can see, just another really really great piece by Larry Elmore. And then the interior art, let's see, interior coloring. Actually, there's tons of people. Chris Apple, Janet Olucio, Paul Daly, Daniel Gellin, Daryl Midget, David O. Miller, Elisa Mitchell, Lee Moyer, Alan Nunes, and Tony Shizulo. I probably hacked some of those. Interior coloring. So yeah, there are color plates in here which are incredible as well. And they go on and on. So yeah, 1992. That was the printing of this. This is the first. This is the second printing actually. So July of 92. So that's this particular edition is the second printing. Not a second edition, it's second printing. Okay, let's get right into the editor's preface. As I see it, if you are reading this, you are one of two types of people. Those of the first type always read the preface and introduction to the work before launching into the main text. If you are one of those people, then what I'm going to say below will give you a mental framework upon which to hang the things you'll encounter throughout the rest of this book. Those of the second type launch right into the body of work, beginning with those parts that first catch their eye, then working outward to related things, and so on, until they find themselves reading the preface some rainy day when it seems there is nothing else to do. If you are of this second type, you'll already absorb this work, but what I'm going to say below will help draw it all into focus, quite possibly in a way you never thought of before. Gary Gygax is undoubtedly the most famous game designer on the planet. His original work on Dungeons & Dragons with Dave Arneson and his subsequent creation of the first edition of Advanced Dungeons & Dragons have served to make the term D&D synonymous to the general public with role-playing. For that reason, it is pretty much impossible to talk about the Mythos game, Gary's new fantasy RPG, without comparing it to and contrasting it with Advanced Dungeons & Dragons First Edition. In the latter game, it seems to me Gary set out to portray a fantasy world by creating certain generic templates. That is, a fighter in AD&D First Edition is a set package of capabilities, a wizard another, a thief yet a third, etc. And each package has a collection of parameters that give it definition. The demi-human races also fit this pattern, and even the background world is sort of a template defining fantasy. The strength of this template approach is that players can quickly latch onto an image, easily distinguishing one character type from another. To borrow a concept from my English training, the template system is something like a prescriptive grammar. It provides for smooth interaction by ensuring that everyone is using common rules. Or to use a different metaphor, it keeps everyone in harmony by ensuring that they are all on the same sheet of music. The long popularity of AD&D First Edition is ample testimony to the power of this design. But in the Dangerous Journey system, Gary has outdone earlier work by opting for a different approach. In this system, and hence in Mythos game, he uses something more like a descriptive grammar. It tells you what people are capable of doing, and because people really do lots of different things, it is naturally open-ended. Or to use another musical metaphor, it is like a jam session in which one mythic vision provides the unity. But the individual musicians are free to improvise upon that theme, and any sort of musical instrument is allowed. I'm kind of down here near the bottom. So let's get to where that is. So let's consider that mythic central vision for a moment. There are strong precedents in human history to describe human beings as having three major aspects: body, mind, and spirit. You'll notice that this is exactly where the Dangerous Journey's character design begins its division, with physical, mental, and spiritual traits. Then it subdivides each of those traits into two categories, and each of those categories into three attributes. These are the innate characteristics of Dangerous Journey's game persona. But humans also learn various sorts of knowledge that enhance their innate abilities. That's the reason that Dangerous Journey's system uses skills rather than classes as a way of defining what game persona are capable of. The end result of this joint attribute and skill system is an easily handled set of persona characteristics that allow for all kinds of characters and all sorts of genres equally well. In a word, in the Dangerous Journey system, Gary has opted for an open-ended way of quantifying persona abilities rather than defining of limits. Similarly, in devising the fantasy world that is the primary setting for the Mythos game, Gary has reached back into the myths that underlie our history. But he uses these sources in a way that sets up divisions without making them fences. For example, while we learn herein that the mythic world of Earth has a counterworld called Fairy, a place of wild magic. Also learn that the boundary between those two worlds is thin, with the result that creatures from one frequently stumble across into the other, and vice versa. Even more significantly, we discover that among the infinite possible dimensions, there are multiple worlds like Earth and Fairy, yet subtly different. And the magic rules provide another important example, in that while there are many different types of spellcasters, the multiple schools listed, each with their own collections of archetypical castings, there are also in-depth provisions for the creation of brand new specific castings, so that players' spellcasting personas can grow beyond the parameters of what is listed. In a nutshell, what Gary has done with the Mythos game is provide a carefully thought out system that invites considerable exploration of its own contents and infinite expansion beyond them. The system provides all the material necessary for getting adventures campaigns started, keeping them running, and encouraging their expansion. Through these rules, players and game masters alike are empowered to imagine and create, but they have a firm foundation from which to do so, one that will provide for growth in any direction. By nature, an editor's job requires the taking of a purposefully critical approach when working with a project. It is my pleasure to confess that at every turn my professional skepticism has been thoroughly thwarted by the depth and breadth of Mythos game. Thank you, Gary. It has been a real joy. Lester Smith. Okay, so there we have the basic premise. And I am just going to take a little break and take a sip. So there you have a basic premise of the game system, the design philosophy that Gary Gygax used in creating this system. And it should play out very differently from the experience that you would have had in something in a game system that was much more structured as I'll describe it that way, your character creation is much more structured by templates rather than what this system is going to do. So I'm going to switch back over, and here we have a welcome to the Mythos game. Now, they spent some time talking about, in general, what a role-playing game is, and I'm not going to rehash over what that is. But he goes down further and kind of explains the game system itself, though, or what its foundations are. So the Mythos role-playing game is based on fantasy, myth, and legend. If you've ever enjoyed reading Robert E. Howard, J.R.R. Tolkien, or the myths and fairy tales, then you have an inkling of what is in store for you within. Likewise, if you found excitement in films such as Dragon Slayer, The Three Musketeers, Excalibur, Conan the Barbarian, Robin Hood, or Thief of Baghdad, then you'll love this game. If you have never played a role-playing game before, you'll find that it is very different from any game you've ever played before. So he basically goes in and lays down the foundations for the game and for the genre of game. They talk about the role of game masters, and the role of game masters. I'll just go over this very quickly. So considering the role of the game master more fully, the game master, GM for short, is the producer, the director of the game action. The GM must know the game rules, the premise upon which they are constructed, and then prepare for play. Because a fantasy role-playing game is a long-term activity, a GM must have materials prepared for game action spanning days, weeks, months, or possibly even years of role-playing activity by the player group. Such materials in total are referred to as the campaign. All right, and again, just going into some of the very basics of what role-playing is and what each of the roles are. The role players, by the first rolling the dice to determine certain basic facts about your character, and then through the process of actually playing the role, you create a unique game persona, often referred to in role-playing as a player character. This make-believe person will become your alter ego, a brave adventurer in a world of high fantasy. Therefore, in the Mythos RPG, such as an alter ego is called a heroic persona, or HP for short. This isn't flattery or exaggeration. Your heroic persona will fight against the most vile and malign forces in the multiverse. That is truly heroic. Before you begin play, you will create your heroic persona by determining certain background facts. Some will be determined randomly, others by selection of a vocation, and the rest by your own decisions. And we will spend a full video just covering that character creation. And then they go on. The game premise: your Mythos campaign is assumed to take place on an alternate world of Earth, in a timeline absolutely parallel to our own, but where magic power, Heka, works and science is rather a useless thing. The date is exactly 1,000 years before our own time, so the year is easy to keep track of. 1992 is 992 on Earth. The world is very much like our own, but its culture and its societies are a mix of medieval and Renaissance with other barbarism in its out-of-the-way places. Earth is more than merely one world, too. It is filled with adventures and intrigues and the incredibly but true possibility dictates that whenever there is some radical change in the course of events, the continuum of time and space diverges. That is where it branching, and where once was one world or one cosmos, there is now suddenly two, each separated from the other, invisible to each other, but existing in the same space. Each alternate reality is operating on a different vibratory pattern in an infinite multiverse. All things are possible, for there is an infinity of probability, and so on. So you're not going to see elves and dwarves and halflings and such. It is 100% human centric, with creatures and beasts coming out of mythology, and that's the that's essentially the world setting and the premise of the game itself. As we go on, we're going to come to the game conventions, and they talk about the dice rolling, and then the fact that this particular book is broken into two different parts, the basic and the advanced game. All right. And as I'm going through each of the chapters, you will see those come together. Common vocabulary, so personas, as we know now, there takes over for player character. So the heroic persona, or HP, not to be confused with hit points, is your player character. There are sheets, there are dice. Useful items. So let's see what their useful items list is. So besides dice, pencils are necessary to play. Of course, access to a photocopier will come in handy, as will the pocket calculator and generating personas for the advanced Mythos game. All right, so you will need a calculator for doing that, because they have many like modifiers that are fractional modifiers, and so you'll have to do those calculations. So the primary rules of the game, or the basics of the game, are known as Mythos Prime rules. And this is the player section. So we are about to, I'll show you the better image here. So this is the player section. And I am going to leave off with this here for today. And that will be video number 2. So that I could really spend that entire time just going over the process of creating a character. I'm going to switch views and come back to here. So there you have it. Basically, the premise and the just the idea behind this game system. I'm really looking forward to because I've read through character creation. It's really interesting. I'm looking forward to doing that video as well, which I will bring out in a couple of days. I have a few other videos to come in between, but there's been a lot of demand for this this video series, so I'm really looking forward to continue it on. And I'm looking for because I was looking for a Facebook community, and there is one for Dangerous Journeys, but I'm not sure how active it is. But if it's not going to be active in the future, then I will use my own Facebook community to continue posting these up there. And I also have a community on MeWe for for Unscripted and Unchained, and those videos these videos and discussion about this game system I will carry over to there as well. So listen, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you get a chance, you can still, like, all of a sudden I just started seeing the prices of these books started to skyrocket. So I think I hit the iron while it was hot about a week and a half to 2 weeks ago. And I picked up most of the books that I need to really go forward with this. The only one, like I said, I couldn't find was the Monster Manual. And I've had actually some people make comments that they're not even sure that was ever put out in print. So So that'll be a curiosity. I think it did come out in print, but it might be very, very hard to find. But so this is out there. Certainly try to get your hands on it. Hopefully, some place down the road, um, maybe Game Designers Workshop will revisit this game if they're able to. Like I said, I don't know with all of the estate issues that went along with Gary Gygax's passing and his family having the rights to some things but not others. It's very, very complicated. So it might be one of those games that it's just hard to find. So you might have to resort to just getting the hard copy of it and going with it from there. So I hope you liked the video. Please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. As I said in my previous video, and I will reiterate for the next several, I'm approaching 1,500 subscribers. Once I hit that 1,500 mark, I will do some kind of a giveaway and a drawing when I make that announcement, and I'll have some kind of an RPG item to give out there and send to a lucky winner, or maybe there'll be several lucky winners, and send those out to you as basically a thank you for following the channel. Thank you for subscribing, and thank you for making something that I really enjoy even more enjoyable from your participation. And so once again, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Stay safe out there. I look forward to seeing you on the gaming screen sometime soon. Maybe I'll even be running a Dangerous Journeys one shot in the near future. So again, thanks for joining. Have a great rest of your afternoon.